Welcome to the Poetic Resurrection Podcast, where we explore perceptions. How self-reflecting questions can give you a better understanding of self. I'm your host, Sonia Iris Lozada. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Poetic Resurrection. And today I have the lovely Rha Arayal. This is her second time on the show, and I loved her so much that I had to have her back. Welcome.
Hi, Sonia. It's so great to be back.
So tell me what you've been doing. When we spoke last time, we were talking about encapsulated, forgive me.
It's okay, yeah. Encapsulated emotions, yeah.
Encapsulated emotions. What have you been writing? Because you just told me offline that you write every day. I'm jealous, by the way.
Yeah, well, I try to write a poem every day, straight after I've woken up. So I write about my dreams, and it's a really good source of inspiration. You sort of have to build up to it because a lot of the time people forget their dreams. So when you write about them every day, you tend to remember them more often. So that's what I've been doing. So they'll just be the most bizarre, like weirdest poems that do not make sense, but I'm trying my best. And that way, it's sort of a really easy, effortless way to make sure that I am putting pen to paper every day.
No, that's really good.
That's been a good habit that I've started, and it's nice to have a solid bank of poems that I've written, just to know that I've been productive in some way every day. I also wrote my first short play, which was really exciting. That happened in January, and it was shown in a South Asian showcase in a theatre in Cardiff. So that was really exciting for me.
Oh, that's exciting. Writing is definitely your thing. To get published at 16 and then you're doing this, I mean, that's incredible. You're doing more than me.
Thank you. Honestly, everything started when I was 16, and now that I'm 20, I already feel like I'm old. I'm not a teenager anymore.
Oh, no, you're not a teenager, but it's funny. You're very advanced for your age. You have to go through it. You have to go through your 20s. You have to go through your 30s. And for me, my late 20s was really difficult because then I was going to go into my 30s and I'm like, I can't get away with shit anymore. You have to have a sense of responsibility.
It always feels old until you get there, and then you're like, no, it's not that bad.
No, and then also, it was funny because as you get older, you're like, who cares anymore, Because I wouldn't trade where my mind is at for anything. I mean, it would be nice if I had my mind and my body, but it kind of doesn't. It doesn't go. But you know what? As you get older, all the time you spend on thinking about what people were thinking of you and how you should behave, you wasted so much time with it. And with you being advanced and writing poetry every day, and especially your dreams, that's how I write too. I write from my dreams.
It's a great source of inspiration and creativity. I feel like it's such an untapped source that people don't really think to turn to. But once you've turned to it, there's just so much that you can take from that. So much symbolism and almost like psychoanalytical stuff that you can take and use in really powerful ways. So I found it really helps me as well.
Yeah, that's why I'm going towards sci-fi. That's all I keep dreaming of, is something sci-fi. So
yeah, that's definitely a sign for you.
Yeah. So I'm trying to finish my last book. So are you working? I know you write poetry every day, but is there another book coming out soon, or what's happening with that?
Well, hopefully. I've just finished writing, I think so. I had Encapsulated Emotions, then I had a short chat book called The Wishing Well, then I had another poetry collection called Sunset Hues. So I'm on to my fourth now, which I've just compiled and sent off to publishers. So very hopefully there'll be another one coming out soon. Please do pray for me and wish me luck.
Oh, praying, because I think what you're doing is amazing, and what you're doing also influences other people of your age. And I think people need to know of every age level that it's okay to be. And you're the messenger of that. So I think that's a great
I
thing.
really do think it's important that young people can feel that they can turn to the creative outlets and space, especially coming from an Asian background that's not really seen as an acceptable career or like a serious thing to pursue. So I really
Mm-hmm.
do hope that more people can sort of be inspired and turn to it, because I think it would have been helpful if I had a role model like that. I think it would have been easier for me to sort of transition into poetry.
Yeah, and it's funny at your age, I didn't have a role model either. It was
Mhm.
like you get a job, you work, you make money, you buy a house, you do, the
Yeah.
typical thing. And I did not go that way at all. So yeah, I mean, being a poet, you break ground. Most poets talk about things that are not easy to talk about,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
and
I
I think
think,
it's those difficult things, those awkward things to talk about, those things you'd rather sort of keep inside or you feel like you shouldn't discuss. Those are the really important things, and that's what we should be writing about and expressing.
right. And I think that when someone leads the way, like you open up for your generation, you're opening it up to them, and they're like, well, she could do it. Why can't I?
Exactly.
It's that kind of somebody opened the door for you, so step through.
Yeah, exactly. And I do find that if even if you try one thing, you do one creative project when you're 16, it can really snowball. Like a lot of my projects, my future creative projects have all come from one that I did when I was 16. I was involved with a Welsh government funded project called Galwad, and I was part of a young company there, which was just young people from Wales, people that knew they were creative but hadn't really found exactly what they wanted yet. From that, I met just a vast network of people and made so many lifelong friends that it's all just almost come from that one thing. You just keep meeting new people and you really find out what you like to do and then, yeah, develop that skill.
Yeah, and you're very good about keeping up with your Instagram page.
I've been quite bad recently, but I need to get back onto it. I've been quite busy with university and I've started a job teaching English now as well, so I haven't been on my
Really?
phone much. Yeah, I tutor two GCSE classes and one A-level class, so I've got
And
quite a lot on my hands, and then uni too.
well, university takes so much of your time.
It
It's
really
kind of
does.
you're going backwards. You go to university to write books, and you've written the books, and now you went to university.
I know exactly. It's hard, especially because when you study English and creative writing, there's so much reading, and a lot of it is independent study. So it's just me alone in my bedroom reading Shakespeare at like 11 p.m. That's what it's.
I had to take Shakespeare, and here it's a requirement in high school. I don't know. High school's like secondary school, I guess would
Yeah.
be for you. And didn't understand a word of it.
Hmm.
Went to college, studied Shakespeare. Then they explained the text.
Yeah.
Because we were just told, here, read Hamlet. And you're like, what the heck is going on? I don't understand what these people are saying. And they're speaking
Yeah.
English.
Uh-huh.
So, but when you get text, it's like, then I fell in love with Shakespeare. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
I
he
think there's
was,
such a misconception about him as well, especially when you're a teenager and you're in secondary school, high school, as you said. As soon as somebody hears Shakespeare, it's just a big like, oh, from the class. Nobody is enthusiastic or wants to learn about him. Luckily, on my course in uni, you don't have to study him in Swansea. You can sort of move your way and maze around from him. You don't have to select that module. But I thought, you know what, I'll give him another go because, like you, I did not understand
hmm
anything in secondary school because they don't explain. They just expect you to pick
hmm
it up. You'll have to memorize quotes and things, but you won't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I
yes.
found it really interesting to learn about him in university. I
Yeah,
think by then you have your own skill set and you can research and sort of understand independently as well. So it helps being older, I think.
yeah. And it's funny because as you're older, and I guess maybe that's why in secondary school, the guy had a lot of sexual innuendos in his writing.
Oh yes.
And
Uh-huh.
so it's like, well, we better not explain this to them.
Yeah, that's probably why it just went over our head.
Yeah, the reason I got into Shakespeare was because I took Shakespeare acting because I'm an actor.
Oh,
So I
uh-huh.
took that and then I'm like, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
I understand what the heck I'm saying now.
Mhm. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
really interesting. And I think just his work, both his plays and his poetry, just having so like the imagery being so rich and the metaphors and all the symbolism, there's just so much to talk about. Like even one sentence of his work could have like thousands of critics arguing about what he means exactly. So there's
hmm
just so much history around the writing, which I really love as well.
Did you have to read the folio?
We haven't read all of it, but we've had to read a few plays from it.
Yeah, the folio is like the original supposed book.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and then we got to go into your poetry. We'll stop with Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Is in Romeo and Juliet. It's
Uh-huh.
I lay this knife and die and rest.
Uh-huh.
But in the folio, it says, I lay this knife to rust.
Oh,
So
definitely.
it's more intense in the folio.
Yeah.
So why did they say change it to rest? Rust is so much better.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
that being such a famous line as well, knowing that nobody will know exactly what he meant. And it's just somebody deciding an interpretation of the folio, isn't it? Not actually. So it is very interesting that even what we see is already through somebody else's eyes.
Oh, translated for some, repeatedly translated. So tell me, we're going to switch gears here. I want to hear some of your current poetry.
I've got one up for you here. This one is called The Graveyard of Ambition. And this is a term that is very closely associated with Swansea, my hometown. You've probably heard of Dylan Thomas, the famous poet. He was actually from Swansea, and he coined the city as a graveyard of ambition, because basically when people come to Swansea, not a lot of people leave. They just seem to get stuck here. So
it must be a great place to live then.
It is. We've got lots of beaches. It's a very beautiful place. Okay, so the graveyard of ambition. This city is a graveyard, full of lost love letters and broken dreams. This city is a graveyard, scattered with sea glass and silent screams. Is it bad to say I love it, though? Through all of its faults, it is still mine. Is it wrong to say I forgive its soul, though coal black, to me it shines? This city is a graveyard, crowded with plastic and bones of regret. This city is a graveyard, swarmed by teenagers with their cheap cigarettes, expertly lit and littered, like their broken hearts to be, expertly painted and glittered. Their poison is their love, can't you see? Their poison is their love, just as my city graveyard is to me, a paradise of treasures, a sea of muses and mistakes, like a blood-stained feather, hopeful but betrayed.
That is beautiful. And there's something about poetry. I like the repetition of the first lines. I have to try to stop myself not to write that way all the time because I love it so much. But I like it, yeah, because it takes you back to what you're talking about. And let me give you another pointer. And so what influenced you to write it? Besides living there.
Besides living here, I think, well, in uni, studying, like, Dylan Thomas is such a big thing, and he actually grew up in the same area of Swansea that I did, so it's called Uplands, and that's where he was born and grew up. And the park where he sat and grew up and played and wrote a lot of his most famous poems is the park that I played in and as a child. So I feel like I've always had this really weird, like, parallel sort of childhood experience to Dylan Thomas. And there's lots of like street murals and lots of art around the city of his face. So it's like just an ever constant reminder. Every single time that we drive through Uplands, there's a sign saying like birthplace of Dylan Thomas. And I remember thinking when I was younger, I want that sign to say me instead. When I was like 10 years old, I was like, that should say Rha, birthplace of Rha Arayal.
Well, look at the influence he had on you.
Yeah, he's definitely had such an influence on me. And in uni, we can even study, like, there's this prize in Swansea Uni that they host called the Dylan Thomas Prize. It's like an international literary award, and we can actually study that and be on the panel and help shortlist the books and poetry for that. So he's almost everywhere I turn. Like, he's part of uni, he's the parks that I'll go to go and relax. He's there, he's in my city, he is everywhere. So yeah, that's what it. And I really like the phrase "the graveyard of ambition." I thought it was such an interesting phrase to describe my city.
Well, it's an amazing quote.
It is.
Yeah, I love the fact that also you refer to people of your age. Again, I love that you are your age and you're working on this, and you've been successful at it, because let's face it, most poets are not.
I know, it's a very difficult industry to get into, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially in this time when there's a cost of living crisis and everyone, the government's cutting funds, especially creative funds. So it's really, really hard to get in and get those jobs. It's a struggle, definitely.
Yes, there's been some research here because there's another poet that works with the incarcerated. And what he said we need to put more money into the creative arts for schools because a lot of these kids that are in prison, and he says they've been in prison, they have no outlet for their creativity. He says he teaches a class and they show up with a book that they wrote. So
wow.
yeah, so it's so important to have the arts because if they did, who knows, maybe they wouldn't have gone in that direction.
Exactly. Yeah. It is so important to feel like your skills are valued, definitely, no matter what they are.
Yeah. And the lack of mentors.
Exactly.
Do you have another poem for us?
Yes, I do. Let me just get it up. This one is called Maya, and that is a Nepali word, but most of the poem is in English.
Okay.
Maya. Maya, Maya, Maya. Lost to me now, like my faded school books. Scuffed school shoes cowering like sink spiders behind the neighbor's mango tree. I always did wonder who glued the souls back together. Maya. The space between the children's checklists and their round cheeks as they gabble, column, copy, rucksack, and tiffin, bursting with Maya, Maya, Maya. The perfume that lingers on a shawl after a college boy straightens it, your shoulders bare, bubbling with goosebumps like expectant volcanoes. I caught a cold that day and I never told him. It was all in the name of, the things we do when we're young. Maya, he called me, as he held my heart, clenched clumsily between his fingers, squashed between his bitten pen and bicycle helmet. Maya, my Maya, lost to me now.
That's beautiful. What is the influence of Maya? Is it going back to the Mayans? Are you using that kind of history?
Maya in Nepali means love. So it's all about like different forms of love and of childhood experiences. And I think this was probably the first time I'd used Nepali in my poetry. And I learnt about it and was inspired by a poetry module that I'd taken in uni, where they said there's nothing actually wrong with mixing the two languages that you know, and it can have a really unique influence on the reader when they're reading it. And they don't know exactly what you're talking about and they have to decode it. So you also almost make the reader like an outsider to the poem, and then they can slowly piece it together. So I thought that was a really interesting idea. So I try to use it. And so this poem is more of like an experimental poem.
Oh, I love the name Maya. It's one of those names that pops into my head. I've used it in poetry.
It does seem to be such a poetic like element to it. It's such a beautiful like sound that it is. It's just Maya. It's beautiful.
It really is. And the fact that it means love, I didn't know that. I think that's a beautiful meaning. And we need a lot of that in today's society.
Definitely, yeah.
Oh,
we could do with some Maya.
We could do with a lot of Maya. I think compassion is something that we need to learn.
Definitely.
You said you went to university. When did you start that?
So I started last September. I'm in my second year now. I'm going into third year. It's not even last, the year before. So I'll be graduating in 2025, which is crazy. I'm over halfway through now.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so is it 4 years there as well?
My course is 3 years. Originally, I was planning on doing 4 and then going abroad a year to study abroad. But I decided to knock that off and just take a gap year instead. So that way I can travel and not have to study.
The same thing happened with me. It's like all you do is study. You wake up, you study, you do other things, but it's because you have to retain so much.
Exactly. Yeah, it is a struggle.
Is there anything that you would like to share with the audience before we sign off?
I think one thing I would say to the audience is if you don't already, then please make sure that you are tapping into that creative source we were talking about with the dreams. It's just so helpful for me. And the way that I sort of came about that and began using my dreams was this lucid dreaming workshop that I was a part of. So as one of the PhD students in the uni, she needed people and volunteers to help her for her research. And she was basically trying to teach us how to lucid dream and to see if we could use it for our poetry. So it was really niche, but it was completely perfect for me. I thought it was a great opportunity. So I never actually learned how to lucid dream. It didn't work on me. I think it was like an 8-week program. So I tried really hard. I just couldn't. I'm not sure if you can lucid dream or not.
I think I've lucid dreamed by accident, but when I actually tried to do it, I
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
So I tried all the different techniques. I've even got like a post-it note by my bed with the phrase like, I will remember my dreams and I will have a lucid dream. Like I repeat that before I go to sleep, but it just does not work. But what it did really help me with was remembering my dreams. So I've done that, and then she gave us loads of tips on how to really use them for the creative good and to use them for our poetry and just loads of techniques. So it was definitely helpful. I didn't get to the original end goal of lucid dreaming, but I picked along so many skills along the way that it was definitely worth it.
What would you say to someone that's your age that seems lost and they don't have an outlet for creativity?
I'd say reach out to people, anyone that you think may be creative. This could be your friends, maybe your parents, even. It could be your neighbors. People, if you go to uni, then maybe join a creative society. I think it's really, really important that you don't almost like suppress the skill or neglect it. I think if you have a creativity within you, then it deserves to be expressed. So definitely just go out there and reach out to somebody. If you're more of a secluded person, if you're more of an individual, like most poets and writers are, then that's completely fine. Just find some poetry that you like and just read as much as you can and write as much as you can as well. They won't be the best poems that you will have ever written, but everyone has to start somewhere.
Yeah, with myself, when I first write a poem, it's terrible because I'm trying, since I get them from dreams, I'm trying to capture the emotion that I had while I was dreaming it and the visual. So that's more important because it's all subject verb. I did this. I,
Yeah.
So it's awful, but that's how you start. It's not what you first come up with is not the end product.
Exactly. Yeah. And I definitely say keep going. Yeah. As you said, work on it. If you think you've done something well, then, congratulate yourself. I think something creatives tend to neglect is congratulating ourselves and saying like, well done me, like I did this. I wrote a poem that I'm proud of. So just really make sure that you're gentle with yourself and that you're encouraging yourself as well. Because I mean, no one else will do it. You have to do it for yourself. You have to be your biggest supporter and your biggest fan.
Yes. And even if you write something, and because I find that a lot of people that write poetry in the early stages, there's a little bit of shame with it. Should I let somebody read it? They're going to know who I am and my deepest fears or loves or whatever. I mean, I was guilty of that myself. I used to put all my poetry in a drawer and never let anybody see it. I would never revisit it. And then I started revisiting and I went through a surge of writing. And then you work on it. I think the biggest drawback is people don't want to rewrite because rewriting is difficult.
That is true. It is difficult, especially if sometimes you look back on something you wrote years ago. It's almost like alien to you. You're like, did I actually write this? Like, did I really do this? Sometimes you almost get embarrassed or cringe. I know I definitely do it at my older poems, but it's all just remembering that like you're on a journey and you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be better than you were yesterday.
And you can always go back and fix it.
Exactly. It's not permanent at all. You can always go back and make something better. And I think another thing to really remember as well is that poetry is so subjective, along with anything else that's creative. Even if like a judge in a competition thinks it's amazing, maybe your parents hate it, or maybe you hate it, but somebody else can see real value in something that you've created. And I think that's really beautiful as well, that not everybody has to agree.
Yeah, because there's a poem that I wrote that it's good. I mean, I like it. It flows. And I've looked online because you do searches for yourself. I don't know if you do this just to see what's out there on you. And then my sister did that. And there was the porn star with her name. So
oh God, oh no.
I know. So it's like, oh my God. But people have taken quotes from this one poem and they put it on their own thing. I mean, my attorney said there as copywritten. I go, I don't care. It's free advertising. As long as they're not making t-shirts and selling it, then we're good. But yeah. So have you found that have you been using your quotes in anything?
I don't think I found that yet, but that's such a nice achievement for you. That's so like to know that you've been such a source of inspiration. I think the closest experience I've had to that is probably just really lovely comments on Instagram or just people being really nice about my poetry. It does just warm your heart in a way that, I don't know, it seems impossible, because when I'm writing something, I don't initially think. I write very selfishly. I don't think like, oh, this will inspire somebody or someone will relate. I just write for me because I have to get it down on the page. So knowing that there's been an added bonus and that somebody else has seen value in what I just see as like my therapy is just really nice. So yeah, it's such a nice feeling. So I definitely do relate to that.
When you influence someone, it just feels like the added bonus. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm glad that my experiences and what I have felt has influenced you in a positive way.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a good experience. It could be something really sad, but just knowing that you've expressed that someone isn't alone, it just really helps. It's almost like you're building a sense of community without meaning to.
Yes, because they could relate. I think enough people, if you open up, that others will see that it's okay to just be.
Exactly.
That acceptance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're just existing, we're just writing. And yeah, we don't really see it as for any greater good other than peace of mind.
Yes, and it's great peace of mind.
It's very good peace of mind. Yeah, sometimes I almost feel like a burden coming off my shoulders once I've got something down. It's just so like relaxing and it's so nice.
So, Rha, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are lovely as always, and thank you for inspiring our youth because that is our future.
Thank you for having me. It's been so amazing.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Poetic Resurrection Podcast, available on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, and many other podcast platforms. Please visit us and subscribe to our newsletter at poeticresurrection.com for the latest information and updates.